Nintendo is known for many franchises that stand out such as Pokemon, Mario, and Zelda. However, one series in particular has had a rollercoaster history with ups and downs, and over the course of time it has seen many entries but never managed to reach the same popularity as Mario and Zelda. But what exactly happened? How did the franchise go from being critically acclaimed to Nintendo abandoning the franchise? Today we will answer how Starfox has been abandoned by Nintendo. But before we dive in deeper, let's answer the question, what is Starfox? Created by Shigeru Miyamoto in 1993, Starfox is one of Nintendo's earlier franchises. The series stars Fox McCloud, leader of the Starfox team. The original game was a forward-scrolling 3D rail shooter, but future entries gradually introduced more freedom of movement and evolved the gameplay over time. Now that we have gone over what Starfox is, let's jump into our very first entry in the series. Starfox made its first appearance on the NES console in 1993, and it was a rail shooter game that follows the story of Fox McCloud and the rest of his allies called the Starfox team. This was the second 3D Nintendo game, with X being the first for the Game Boy and the first Nintendo game to use polygonal graphics, achieved with the Super FX graphics chip included in the cartridge. Starfox went on to receive critical acclaim as it sold more than 4 million copies and established the Starfox series as a flagship Nintendo franchise. A sequel titled Starfox 2 was developed but was never released until 2017 as a title for the NES Classic Edition. The reason why Nintendo held back the release of Starfox 2 was due to concerns that the 16-bit graphics of Starfox 2 would compare poorly against newer games at the time, so Nintendo decided to cancel the Starfox 2 release to prioritize its upcoming Nintendo 64 console. Following the successful release of Starfox, Nintendo would release a reboot 4 years later in 1987 called Starfox 64. And if anyone knows about Starfox, it was probably because of this game, and like the original, this game was also a rail shooter game in which the player controlled Fox McCloud and his iconic R-Wing. Most of the game takes place in corridor mode, which forces Fox's vehicle down a on-rails path straight forward through the environment. The player's vehicle can be maneuvered around the screen to dodge obstacles and can also perform a somersault to get behind enemies or dodge projectiles. At this point, Starfox was slowly on its way to becoming one of Nintendo's main flagship franchises along with Mario and Zelda. But little did we find out that Fox McCloud and the franchise would enter a dark period that it would unfortunately never recover from. For the first time, the next entry in the Starfox franchise wouldn't be developed by Nintendo but rather Rare, as Nintendo producer Shigeru Miyamoto had seen a prototype for a game Rare was working on titled Dinosaur Planet for the Nintendo 64, and later proposed to them to change it into a Starfox title. Starfox Adventures was released for the Nintendo GameCube in 2002, and it was also the final game that Rare developed for a Nintendo home console before being acquired by Microsoft the day after Starfox Adventures was released in the United States. The game featured a third-person's perspective where you operated Fox in a similar manner to that of Ocarina of Time. Most elements of this game, such as the lock-on system, use of scraps as currency, and puzzle solving were all similar elements drawn from Zelda. This game also featured an R-Wing mode like the past entries in the series, but they were very infrequent and didn't do enough to satisfy the fans who wanted the traditional rail shooter gameplay that they came to enjoy. The game received generally positive reviews, resulting in selling over 1.2 million copies. After the release of Starfox Adventures, Nintendo handed over the development to the next Starfox game to Namco due to the fact that Nintendo ended their partnership with Rare. This was the second time Nintendo had handed over development of a Starfox game to another company rather than Nintendo developing the game themselves. Starfox Assault was released in 2005 for the GameCube. This game was divided into 3 distinctive types. You had your R-Wing missions, Landmaster missions return, and a new game mode which you had to perform certain tasks on foot. As expected, the classic R-Wing missions were adored and praised by fans, while the on-foot missions received mixed reviews. The story and the idea were good, but it demonstrated that the franchise had a possibility for expansion, but the execution of such made it hard for many people to enjoy. Starfox fans wouldn't have to wait long for the next installment in this series, as 1 year later after Starfox Assault, Starfox Command was released for the Nintendo DS, and at this point Nintendo decided to develop the game alongside Q Games. Now, I'm not sure if you see the pattern here, but the last 3 installments were not really developed by Nintendo themselves. It's like they can only provide creative insight as to what could be done with the franchise at this point. Starfox Command played similarly to the original Starfox, but the main focus was on the R-Wing missions and more of a shoot-'em game. This game adopted multiple pathway structures from Starfox 64, but instead it had 9 different endings if the player was bothered to even play through the game multiple times. The game was generally well received but sold poorly and is often forgotten amongst the other entries in the series. Now, fans thought that the fast turnover rate between Assault and Command meant more entries that would follow in the following years, but they were just mistaken as it took 5 years for the next game to be released. But as it turned out, it was just a remake of Starfox 64 released for the Nintendo 3DS. The game ended up receiving positive reviews, but it left many fans wondering what plans Nintendo had for the franchise in the future. At this point, each new entry of the franchise seemed to knock it down further, and with Nintendo seemingly out of ideas for the series to the point where they have to outsource their projects to other developers. In 2013, there was an internal pitch at Retro Studios proposing that after the release of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, their next project should be a Starfox game. The idea was that since Retro had successfully worked on Nintendo's Metroid and Donkey Kong IPs, they could apply the same treatment to Starfox. The Starfox game would have been called Starfox Armada, but sadly the title would never be developed as Retro's leadership and Nintendo decided to pass. It would have taken place after the events of Starfox 64, and it would work as a reboot, acting as if no games had been made since the Nintendo 64 title. It would have also used a puppet visual style reminiscing of the series' early promotional image, and would have had a major focus on online multiplayer, and Miiverse integration would have also been featured. It was considered one of Nintendo's first real evergreen titles with periodic DLC that would add new ships, planets, and cosmetics. Another 5 years passed, and Nintendo decided it was time to give Starfox another shot, and this time it was with the help of Bayonetta developer Platinum Games. And just like that, Starfox Zero was released for the Wii U in 2016. This seemed like the classic return of the classic rail shooter format that all the fans had been waiting for, except it wasn't. The control scheme was the first thing that was disliked by fans and critics, as it literally forced you to use the Wii U's gamepad to aim, proved to be catastrophic, and the gameplay suffered as a result. This wasn't the only thing that was disliked by everyone, as the levels were smaller, emptier, and there were very few of them compared to Star Fox 64. Many fans critiqued the game as being a Star Fox 64 remake 20 years later that somehow has gotten worse in every aspect. This perception of the game would translate into the game having poor sales, selling less than 500,000 copies and becoming the worst selling game in the franchise in Japan specifically. A standalone title defense game titled Star Fox Guard was bundled with the game as well. Now, we have reached the latest installment in this series, that being Star Fox 2 for the NES Classic Edition, and after that, the franchise has not seen another mainline game since. And Starlink does not count as it only featured Fox McCloud as a playable character. But if you haven't noticed, whenever there's a need to reimagine the gameplay and mechanics, Nintendo passes the game to another company to develop it. But when Nintendo develops the next Star Fox game, they fall back to the successful titles and later remake them or reboot them. And when they're tasked to figuring out where the franchise is gonna go, they're completely lost. In an interview with character designer for Star Fox Sakaya Imamura, he mentions why Nintendo doesn't want to make more Star Fox and F-Zero games. Quote, "For both of those games, Shigeru Miyamoto was behind the originals, and he has a very strong feeling towards the IPs that he's created, but he's also a very busy person. So I think one of the reasons specifically for those two IPs why you don't see games coming more frequently is because of the balance between what he has on his plate and his desire to be a big part of the new games in those franchises. It's just impossible to have regular yearly releases or every 5 years even." He also believes that it will return at some point, whether it's a new installment in this series or a film, and he has stated that if there were to be a movie, Miyamoto should give him a call because he would love to be part of that. Now that the Nintendo Switch 2 has been announced, I think it's the perfect console for this title, especially since Nintendo could take advantage of the mouse feature to let players guide the R-Wing. I would love to hear what you think the franchise truly needs to become a household franchise like Mario, but for now it's safe to say that we won't be seeing another Star Fox game for a while at least. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like these, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.